I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Chisel. Here. Carlson.
Here.
Neal.
Here.
Luce.
Here.
Bergen.
Here.
Hadley.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Is there anyone in the public that wishes to speak to the council on something that's not on the agenda? Seeing none. Consent agenda.
Consent agenda consists of minutes of October 21, 2019 meeting, claims, renewal Class E liquor license for Decorah Mart, including Class B wine, Class C beer, and Sunday sales privileges. Renewal Class C liquor license for Your Place, including Sunday sales. Renewal Class C liquor license for Courtyard and Cellar, including Sunday sales and outdoor service area. Resolution 3018, setting a date for a public hearing. Quick Star easement agreement, Montgomery Street.
Move for approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Roll call.
Chisel.
Aye.
Carlson.
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Luce.
Aye.
Bergen.
Aye.
Hadley.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Conduct a public hearing on proposed amendment to the 2017 Commercial Business Park Urban Revitalization Area.
Mayor, just a background on this. Earlier this summer, the Economic Development Property Committee met and discussed a proposed application for commercial tax abatement for a project in the Decorah Business Park. The applicant, Pete Marceau with Marceau Electric, is building a contractor's shop on about a 1.6 acre lot in the business park, just off Sweet Parkway. The proposed abatement is for 3 years, with the exemption being 75%. The first year, 60% of the value, the second year, and 45% of the value of the third year. It's anticipated that the taxable value of the finished building would be around $400,000 with annual property taxes of approximately $13,000 a year. The proposed abatement then would result in about $23,400, assuming all those numbers are correct, over the course of the abatement program.
Okay, I'll open the public hearing. Is there anybody who wishes to speak to this item? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Consider Resolution 3013, adopting amendment to the plan for the 2017 Commercial Business Park Urban Revitalization Area.
I would move Resolution 3013.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Luce.
Aye.
Carlson.
Aye.
Chisel.
Aye.
Bergen.
Aye.
Hadley.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Consider Ordinance 1239, amending ordinance designating an area of Decorah, Iowa as a 2017 Commercial Business Park Urban Revitalization Area. First reading.
Are there any questions? The ordinance
See if you're going to do a background on it or not.
yeah, well, the ordinance just restates and designates the area, and there's a map in your background. That's all that ordinance is, so it's fairly
But just for everybody else.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Move for approval of ordinance 1239.
Second.
Now, any discussion or questions? Roll call.
Johnson.
Aye.
Chisel.
Aye.
Carlson.
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Luce.
Aye.
Bergen.
Aye.
Hadley.
Aye.
I would take this time then to ask if the council would consider waiving the second, third reading and adopting, or if you want to continue it to the next meeting.
I would move to waive the second, third reading and adopt.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Chisel.
Aye.
Carlson.
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Luce.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Hadley.
Aye.
Bergen.
Aye.
Consider ordinance 1240, an ordinance amending Title VI of the Municipal Code of the City of Decorah by adding chapters 6.35, fowl and selection, 6.35010, roosters prohibited in the keeping of roosters within the City of Decorah. First reading.
So just a little background on this as well. It's been discussed a couple of different times at the council level. And there was additional discussion and some direction at the council work session held on October 28th to draft an ordinance that prohibits the keeping of roosters in the city limits. And I guess rooster is defined as a male chicken, in case anybody had a question about that, right? But this is precipitated by several comments, complaints, letters, just detailing the nuisance that roosters have caused over the last several months and weeks in Decorah. And so this new ordinance section aims to define the prohibition. It does allow for keeping roosters on a temporary basis, up to 7 days to accommodate the Winship County Fair or other special events and educational purposes as outlined in the ordinance. Currently, the ordinance is written to take effect upon passage, approval and publication, or January 1, 2020, whichever is later. And there's no provision for grandfathering of existing roosters. Compliance with the ordinance would be upon January 1.
Have you had any correspondence?
Other than what's been previously talked about in
Okay.
terms of support for the prohibition. But since October 28th, when the council during that work session discussed this, there have been no comments
Okay.
received.
Any,
All the feedback I've gotten is overwhelmingly in support of this ordinance, so.
okay.
Chad, just a question about the sort of temporary basis. Is there any need for like approval to be secured before that, or just if a rooster was found in the city limits and it was then determined to be a temporary basis, it would be fine?
It'd be complaint driven. There's no approval
There-
process outlined in the ordinance. So if there were a complaint, we would investigate that, explore those conditions, and determine if it's an educational or the fair situation.
Okay.
Make a motion for approval of ordinance 1240.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Carlson?
Aye.
Luce?
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
Hadley?
Aye.
Bergen?
Aye.
Chisel?
Aye.
Neal?
Aye.
Again, I would ask the council to consider waiving second, third, and adopting, or what's your pleasure on continuing this conversation?
I move to waive the second and third readings of ordinance 1240
And adopt.
and adopt.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Any discussion?
I'm not going to vote yes because I feel like an ordinance should have time for people to talk about it through readings. I appreciate the fact that it's a nuisance and we want to get something done, but I'm going to vote no just because I feel like feedback is important on this one.
Okay.
And
Roll-
so to be clear too, it takes 3/4 to waive second, third readings.
Okay. Roll call. Oops.
I'll withdraw my motion.
Yeah, I can hear, I hear that.
Now, we have a motion and a second on the floor, and is that correct?
That's right,
So
yeah.
a
So you should
vote
act
is
on it.
required.
Oh, vote is required, okay.
Yeah.
Any other
Okay.
discussion?
Any other discussion?
Did you have a comment? Did it- Okay,
Yep, I would go along with that then.
okay.
Is that,
Good.
you
Yeah.
agree with that as well?
If you're both withdrawing it,
Okay.
no, not going to be any
So then this will
objection.
be the first reading, and there will be a second reading
That's right.
at the next city council meeting. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Consider approval and certification of 2019 residential tax abatement applications as been publicized.
Publicized via this agenda, there's not a requirement to publish those in the
Okay.
paper, right? These are all of the current 2019 applications for new construction and improvements or value added to existing units throughout the 2019 calendar year to date. All of the individual applications are in the council packet for review. I did not print paper copies of those. All of the applications are eligible for certification, and the recommendation by staff is for the council to vote to certify all the applications in one voting motion, and that's certainly allowable. Certifications are then delivered to the county assessor with a cover letter stating the certification. All of the valuations are construction value or market value. It'll be up to the county assessor to determine the taxable value, and that's for him to determine based on the unit's value, and then he places that on their tax rolls, and then he notes that the abatement has been applied. So in the case of the improvements or additions, to be eligible, they need to increase the value of the home by more than 10%. And while we look at the construction or market values that the owner has certified, that is still up to the county assessor to make that determination. So while today we look at the numbers and we say they meet that or exceed that 10%, it's still up to the county assessor to determine that. On those homes where those improvements are made, those existing homes, only that improvement is eligible for the abatement. They still pay taxes on the amount that was there before the improvements were initiated. And then just another couple of comments from me just to opine why maybe the number of units or applications are down this year. I think one part of that is that the economy is still pretty tough for a lot of folks, and so we just aren't seeing a lot of new construction. The other is there was some uncertainty as to whether the program would continue. And if you'll recall, we had a conversation back in June, I think it was, with some developers and some builders and realtors as to the council's direction continuing the program or not. The council then indicated that you would continue the program at least through 2020. And if you recall, the program as set up and last initiated does not have a sunset. So it will continue until such time that you formally withdraw it or rescind it or modify it. And then at that time, you indicated that you would change when you would critique and evaluate the program to do that earlier in the year for the 18 months hence, rather than doing it in December for just the next 12 months. And that was some of the concern from some of the developers and builders in regards to timing for the construction season. So again, right now, I think the council direction is to let it go through 2020. So some of that uncertainty, I think, led to the decline in housing start this year as well. So, and then just a final note, in the last 5 years of the program, the community has seen over $32 million in construction and economic activity, equating to approximately $18 million in new valuation growth.
So the verbiage in the past has been, or until council's goals are met. But I've not ever heard the council ever set any goals for the program.
Right. The goals were more broadly stated in November of 2014 when the program was first initiated, to just simply say that the council wanted to impact affordable housing and create growth in the affordable housing market. But there were no numbers put on that, number of units, growth in subdivisions or anything like that. It was a broad statement.
I think that's a different topic of vision and definition. I'll make a motion to approve and certify the 2019 residential tax abatement application.
Second.
John, quick question. If I'm related to an applicant, should I recuse myself?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to recuse myself. I'm related to applicants B and C.
Okay. Any other discussion?
No, but I would just give a shout out, not that I've seen everybody else's, but I saw David Wadsworth's work on the house on Main Street. I don't know if anybody went to his open house.
Yes.
And I do, for another later date, but I do encourage us to think about how we can incentivize someone who takes, $64,000 house and historically renovates it, takes the historic tax credits and does some really great things for the evaluation of that house, but also I think the neighborhood in general. So it was awesome.
Okay. Roll call.
Hadley,
Aye.
Luce,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Carlson abstains, Chisel,
Aye.
Bergen.
Aye.
Appointment to boards and commission, Planning and Zoning Commission. I'm bringing forth Nathan Thompson as a reappointment.
I would move acceptance of Nathan for the planning and zoning.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Luce,
Aye.
Carlson,
Aye.
Chisel,
Aye.
Bergen,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
I will also make a comment that there are commission terms that'll be coming up, one on the airport, one on the Board of Adjustment, and one yet on planning and zoning. We still have yet to hear from people who are able to continue on that, but I wanted to bring it before the public so that they know also that they could go on and look and put in applications if they so desired. Okay, city manager, department heads, and council reports.
Just a couple of things to report on from my desk this evening, Mayor. Number one, there have been ongoing conversations regarding change in management for dispatch operations, especially as it relates to fiscal agent status or employer of record for the dispatch center. The county's Emergency Management Commission has had at least one discussion about taking over operations of the dispatch, and they'll have another meeting tomorrow night. The Emergency Management Commission is made up of the county's mayors, and so they've engaged in that conversation pretty extensively with staff and public safety personnel. So those conversations are ongoing. If you're interested in attending that Emergency Management Commission meeting, I think it's at 6 o'clock tomorrow night.
At the annex.
At the annex up at the courthouse. I talked to some of the council members regarding the annual salary CPI, Consumer Price Index adjustment. There's been some changes in the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the indices that they provide as that relates to our adopted council or compensation policy. And so we'll continue those conversations and bring a recommendation back to the council to make some changes to that policy. And then finally, I typed out a little bit of a letter here regarding some conversations that I've had with Alliant Energy. So I just kind of wanted to frame that a little bit, and I know there are some council members here that want to talk about that a little bit under their report as well. So, and basically the gist of the letter is, or the statement to you is that, as you know, I've had several meetings with representatives from Alliant Energy, most recently on Monday, October 28th, regarding the franchise agreement, just to keep those conversations moving and to review some of the more technical nature of the franchise agreement. We had that work session on last Monday night, and some council members asked me how that meeting went and some of the key points that were raised. And that led to a larger conversation about some of the legal issues that I just need guidance on determining what those mean, how they can be addressed either through the franchise agreement or just questions of procedural nature as it involves negotiating that. So, so I would ask that the council discuss that in a little more detail, and I know some of you are prepared to do that tonight. And then set a utility committee meeting where we can discuss some of those key issues and frame those and understand what those legal questions really are and move forward with that. So just putting that in front of you.
We had a discussion this morning about the compensation and taking a look at that matrix that was set up over almost 10 years ago, that City Council needs to take a look at that again, or at least decide whether they want to have somebody come in. Can you talk a little more about what we talked about that this morning?
So going back to the CPI index as it relates to staff salaries, what the mayor is referring to is In 2008, the city hired a consultant to review salaries, market analysis, and that was kind of the impetus for creating the salary matrix that we have today. Over the last 11 years, it's been used in bits and pieces and not real consistently, and some of that is the reason why it's a little out of whack today as well. So what we talked about this morning was making some adjustments to that compensation plan, taking a harder look at how that CPI is implemented into that matrix, but maybe bringing in somebody that could help us work through drafting a new or improved matrix that makes some sense. Right now, it's 11, 12 years old, and it's gotten out of whack, so.
Well, a lot of times, we've had to adjust certain department heads because they fell differently than the people that were below them.
Right, some of the salary ranges and the pay grades don't match up with market rates in terms of hiring new positions.
Well, knowing that such a study would take a long time, but to be able to at least consider the potential of what that might cost, that we could at least put something in the budget when we're looking moving forward.
Right.
Whether you act on it or not, but it should be in this budget session, as we look at the budget at the end of the year.
And that's all I have.
About the cost for the hiring of the consultant to be able to do the study?
Well, yes, and then, when we started that, the last time we didn't have anything. Now we do have something, so we don't know for sure what it would cost to have a consultant to look at it or to even evaluate it. We just know it's not up to date.
So should we be looking at advising staff to create a request for proposals on that, so we know what our exposure would be? I mean,
I think,
Yeah,
I don't want
I
to
mean,
be
the first
about
thing,
process, but
yeah.
the first
no.
thing we need to determine, we don't, right now, I mean, we just started talking about this today, other
Right.
than the CPI piece, which was just last week. Because it's usually about mid to late October when we start looking at the CPI, because the Bureau of Labor Statistics doesn't even publish information until the end of September, so you have to get into October before you can even start doing that. So this is all new conversation generally coming out of that CPI matrix in our compensation plan. But what we talked about this morning was potentially looking at a consultant, but we know we don't have to go, we think we don't have to go all the way back to recreate everything that we did. So, if that consultant 12 years ago cost us $20,000, it might be something less than that moving forward to modify what we have, if that's where we end up, right? It's early in the conversation.
And how would we determine even how to get an estimate for something like that?
Well, the first thing we need to do is just reach out to some consultants and start developing a scope of work
Okay,
before we would even send out an RFP. Ask, what is a price range for this type of work, and to understand what we want to do and how we get there so that we can develop that scope of work so we even know how to ask for an RFP.
I'd be interested in at least some information that would pertain to that.
Yeah, we'll keep that working and bring that to you. That'll certainly have to be part of the budget process.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Department heads.
Met with the Civil Service Commission this morning. We're coming to the end of our hiring marathon. We have 4 applicants for police officer positions. We ranked them today and certified that list. I think John had discussed getting a copy of does everybody have a copy of it in?
It was sent out, but late in the afternoon, so I don't know if it's gotten to the city council yet.
No, because I think I just got the letter, so.
There's 4 names on the list, 3 are certified, 1 are not, 1 is non-certified. The next step in the process is I'll sit down and have a one-on-one conversation with them. It's called the chief's interview. It's very informal. It's a chance for them to ask questions about our department, a chance for me to talk to them. I want to get that done this week, and then we'll make the job offers this week. And the offers are pending the medical for our retirement system and an MMPI passing that. And this week we are also interviewing for the dispatcher position. We have 4 people that we'll be interviewing, and that'll be Thursday.
Mike?
We just finished our inspection on all our open tanks of the plant. We're in the process of refilling them. Every year we drain them, inspect them. We go through all the mechanical structure of it and also the pump that's associated with it. Last thing we want to do is 20 below and have them go down We spend a lot of time during the summer and early fall in doing maintenance on it. Like I said, there's a pump associated with every one of these tanks. Some of these pumps are extremely large in size. Just the mechanical seal alone costs up to $6,000. But this season, with all the pumps that we went through, I think we were about $6,000 to $8,000 per part, which is actually extremely cheap for us for the year. So that's it.
A couple quick things. We recently applied for a grant from ICAP, which is the Iowa Community Insurance School. That's our liability company, liability insurance company, for $1,000 to put security cameras at the campground. So I've been notified that we received that grant. And then I've got information here on the Municipal Leadership Academy. So the first session of that and the closest session is November 21st. So anyone is eligible to go to that, even veteran council members. So if anyone is interested in that, let me know and we'll get you the information so you get signed up.
Wonder, where is that first one? Fayette. That's pretty close.
What did you say?
Fayette.
Okay. It's a very worthwhile thing to go through when you first, it is.
That's all I have.
Okay, Kristen.
We submitted our annual report to the State Library of Iowa last week. Also submitted my own director recertification, which is good for 3 years. We're waiting for the metal coping to be put on our roof, and we're still crossing our fingers for this week. It looks like it'll be a pretty chilly week to be on the roof. Last month we presented 56 programs and had over 1,300 people attend, so it was a busy October at the library. And I'll be meeting Thursday morning with the other Winship County library directors to talk about our county funding request for the coming year that usually meet in December and January.
And if any of you are e-book readers, check with Kristen, as there's some changes coming down from the publishers that could be hindrance to what the library is working with as far as e-books are concerned. Todd?
We're still having some issues with getting 2 back-to-back water tests from well number 7 to pass inspection. One will pass. We have to have 2 samples taken consecutively that pass. The first one will pass, the second one will fail, the next time be vice versa. So over the weekend we decided to do some more disinfection. So we disinfected Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and we flushed all day today. Took 2 more samples, so hopefully we're on the path to getting that.
Thank you. Andy?
The annual turkey shoot,
Turkey shoot.
free throw shooting contest with a parent and a child is coming up on November 12th.
Jeremy?
Wrapping up a lot of street projects.
I noticed that.
Oneota Drive Bridge, the bridge itself is more or less complete. Working on approaches this week. There'll be a little bit of painting that we're not get done this fall. The alley off of Broadway is complete. A few minor things left there. Our 2019 street improvements projects, which would be North Street, Pool Street, College Drive, Shady Lane, Hilltop, Commerce, and Water Street, are all complete except Water Street. East Water Street would be a spring project.
Okay.
A little more going on there, so we're looking to wait for spring. So got a lot done. Very happy with how the contractors moved quickly to do a nice job, but also get done in our tight time frame. One to finish up will be Lower Ridge Road, which started last week, and weather permitting will be finished here in the next couple weeks. Other than that, we are picking up leaves.
Lots and lots of.
Too bad there's not a commodity for leaves. Yeah.
Or walnuts.
Yeah. Okay. Zach?
Just on a fire department standpoint, National Drone Safety Awareness Week this week. We put a post out on Facebook, but it just kind of really focuses in on public safety and using drones. So we're just kind of pushing that out there. Flying a drone.
Well, and then you said you were starting to get all the equipment fixed for winter.
Yeah, so we're getting all of our pumps and stuff ready for winter and fuel and stuff that way, so.
I think it was the Winnebago Energy or Emergency Commissioner that put out a really good video on the Gunderson flight and helicopter. If you haven't seen that,
We had recently done a promotional video with Gunderson Air, just kind of showcasing the air ambulance that is in our area. So we did a partner, kind of did a little PR thing with that. So if you go to our Facebook page, you can see the video on there and see us working with Gunderson Air. I know this week they're in Georgia at a conference showcasing it's the first helicopter in the United States with IFR. So
yeah, I saw it before I came. It was good. Okay, council.
I have nothing this evening, Mayor.
Okay.
We, with the Sustainability Committee, we met with Decorah Jobs and kind of reviewed with them the draft of the plan that we've been working on related to economic development. It was a great meeting. It was great to meet all the folks there for me as a new council member. And then I think Andy will talk, and we'll talk about the utility meeting, but.
If you want to talk about it, you can. I was just going to call for utility meeting for following the 18th. I think we can save the conversation maybe for then, but go ahead if you'd like to add.
Well, I think some of us had expressed talking to Sheila Tipton, seeing what it would cost to have us talk to Sheila for about an hour or so ahead of time so we could get a conversation going about sort of what our legal ramifications are with a franchise agreement, and rather than trying to submit questions and get back, just actually have a conversation
Do
regarding
you
it.
want to do that with just your city attorney, or do you want to have that as an actual utility meeting
Well,
ahead of the utility meeting, right?
Right.
Does that make sense?
yeah, I mean, for me, I can speak for myself. I prefer that when we think about it, that we're talking about Sheila only because I feel like she's a utility law expert. We've hired her to consult with us on the Decorah area group as well. And so rather than kind of this back and forth, it would be great to just sort of have the expert on utility law representing the city that we could get advice from. That'd be my
Was
take.
there some concern about if that's appropriate to go through her? And should you be going through the city attorney? Can you give me some input on that? Is a conflict of
Who are you
interest?
talking to?
Both of you.
She's already our attorney. Yeah, we already hired her.
Well, in the past,
Okay, I'm just checking.
in the past, we've used Steve Nadell
Yeah.
of Nadel of
Yeah.
Ehlers and Cooney
Correct.
to do our consulting. I mean, you guys can hire, it's your choice and your discretion on what attorney you hire to do that consulting. But the city had hired that firm when we went through the municipalization process before, partly because I think we had a prior existing relationship related to other matters, well, telecommunications,
Fiber.
utility, fiber, and things like that.
Sure.
So I guess my thought on it is it's your discretion who you use. Sheila did represent Decorah Power, so that's you just want to make sure you're getting unbiased advice,
Okay.
and that's for you guys to decide who's going to provide that in the best way.
Okay. Well, I'll let you work that out. I do have, I think 3 questions prior to that meeting I can send out to you, Andy, that I'd like information on prior to the utility meeting.
Well, so the
I'll
question
send it.
still remains
Yeah.
as to whether that is, if that's a conference call or she comes up, is that a
Yeah.
meeting, or is that just a consultation with Andy and city attorney, right? I mean,
Yeah.
do you understand what I'm saying?
Well, if it was my preference, it would at least be the utility committee, so there was a couple of us thinking about questions.
Okay.
And ideally, if we wanted the utility committee to make decisions about the franchise agreement, it would be helpful to have information ahead of time. So a conversation, so maybe we're talking about 2 utility meetings essentially.
That, yep.
Yeah, I think
yes,
we're probably
yep.
talking about 2 utility meetings.
Mhm,
So
okay.
whenever those might happen.
Right.
Okay, and I'll get my questions to you too.
So,
Okay.
so Andy, at least one of them on November 18, utility committee, so.
Have one every 2 weeks for the at this juncture, then maybe it could happen then.
But didn't you want the information prior to that meeting on the 18th?
Well, if we're going to engage legal counsel,
Why don't we do
Well-
it in the 18th
Well, yeah, that's up to you guys. Yes. It sounded like you wanted one to kind of vet that out and then the second one to discuss.
Yeah, I mean,
So
I guess
whether it's the 18th or before, or
The
the 18th and after, it doesn't
right, and the
matter.
18th is a good night. We're here. It's a night that we can get good participation. And so I guess if it was possible to have a consultation with a partial of the utility committee prior to the 18th, then I'd be fully supportive of that. If that timeline doesn't work, then let's use the 18th of that meeting.
So should we just make a decision on another time than before that, right now?
We might need to find out when Sheila's available.
Yeah.
But it would
just,
be good if it was
give
after
you a little
school, like
discretion
after
in
a.
Tentatively, why don't we plan on the 18th, and if we
Okay.
get another meeting in before, then we'll do that.
Yeah,
I like
if you
it.
can't, then
Okay.
you don't want to put the horse before the cart.
Right.
Is that right?
Right.
Okay, that sounds good.
We'll talk about
Okay,
Sheila then.
then, anything in there? Steve?
I attended the Growing Sustainable Communities Conference in Dubuque on the 24th and 25th. Very interesting. If you're interested in reviewing some of the information from the two keynoters on the Dubuque, cityofdubuque.org, under their videos. Both of the keynoters are available there. The Hey Ho, H-E-Y Ho, H-O-E, she was very, very studied. It's her field. She's a PhD in it. Climate, and the accumulated very interesting stuff about there's no more hurricanes. It's just the intensity of the hurricanes. And with the warmer water, the propensity for the ocean holding all of the heat that's being generated by the climate change, and the propensity to, well, what we've established, that heavier rains, more frequent rains, and various things. But she gives a really good description and understanding of that. So if you're so moved to review it, it's very interesting. I attended sessions on integrating watershed and hazard mitigation, adapting urban landscapes for conservation and carbon sequestration, collaborative energy planning, which was very interesting in Dane County, Wisconsin. Madison did a plan, but then the other 7 communities in the county have gone together in terms of planning what their sustainability efforts can do, which is a very interesting concept in terms of thinking about county, cities working together, towns working together. So that was collaborative energy planning. Renewable technologies of tomorrow, starting today, was a very difficult topic in terms of getting around, but it's looking at buying when energy's cheap and using it at any time then. And so actually paying people is the idea, paying people to do good things, like putting a timer on your water heater so you would use energy in the middle of the night when actually some energy is being sold on the market, negative cost. So you're actually being paid to use the energy then. Anyway, some fascinating perceptions. And the last session I attended on a Friday was energy efficiency and getting projects done. And Governor Culver and a company he represents were the presenters and talking about how to use the GSA and the standards that they've already adapted and have in place, that any city can actually use those standards and use the GSA to be able to do projects and get things done. And the idea that you would take a city building and make it energy efficient and then use the differential between what you had been spending for the energy and what you're spending now, and use that to pay off the cost of doing the project. So they have a company that's willing to take through request for proposal all the way to finishing it, so.
Sounds like stuff that will be good to bring to your sustainability group.
Very interesting conference. So I appreciate going.
Anything else? Johanna?
There's a community betterment meeting immediately following tonight's council meeting. And please exercise your vote tomorrow in our local elections.
Russ?
I attended the inauguration of the 11th president of Luther College. Go Norse. And I thought it was wonderful how the president chose to integrate the downtown into her inaugural
Very much so.
weekend. There were a lot of people downtown Friday night, a lot of people from out of town who hadn't seen Decorah, and it was really heartening to get their feedback and whatnot. Because a lot of them had either not ever been to Decorah or their alumni coming back who hadn't been for
Downtown.
quite some time, and to see the positive change was great.
Thanks.
Nothing, Mayor.
Okay. I felt privileged to be able to be a participant in the inauguration, and it was very celebratory and exciting to see the way she promotes and supports and helps sustain both of us, the town and the college. I've done a lot of interviewing for the EMA commission discussion, and I've appreciated the talks that have gone on with the city and those members, and we'll get information, as he said, going forward. I'm not sure if this is usually done, but I did want to acknowledge the passing of one of our longtime business person and person who's worked with us, and the fact that Dwayne Bruning passed away on Sunday, and I'm sure you can find information on that. But even though our cable commission is not in operation or hasn't met, it still has been in place, and he's been on it since it first started. I think that's all I have. So,
Motion to dismiss.
thank you.